Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope you are ready to open the Quran and to make this the month of the Quran. Inshallah, what I'll do every night is to have some reflections or insights on one or few verses of the Quran. And this is an attempt to help us think and ponder the verses of the Quran. And I'll do different approaches. Sometimes I might focus on the meaning of a word. Maybe I'll go to the Arabic a little bit just to help us learn as we reflect. And sometimes I'll just give some general reflections on the verse. Tonight I select for you a beautiful verse from Surah Al-Ankabut. And in this ayah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, بل هو آيات بينات في صدور الذين أوتوا العلم وما يجحد بآياتنا إلا الظالمون. So in this verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing the Quran, and it's interesting to look into how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the Quran itself. And as we're going to see tonight inshallah, I'll also give you some description of the Quran from the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu. So here he said rather the Quran, or it, the Quran here, is embedded in the chests of the people of knowledge. بل هو آيات بينات. So the way the Quran exists, it exists in different forms. One of the ways of the existence of the Quran is in the hearts and the chests of the people of knowledge. And the way it exists in the hearts and the chest of the people of knowledge is in the form of clear signs. And this is no doubt one of the very common descriptions of the Quran, that it is ayat. It's a number of signs, and signs could mean miracles, anything that shows the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an ayah. And this is why every verse in the Quran is an ayah. Of course, this description, especially the clarity of the Quran, we cannot underscore the importance of that description, because I think nowadays, in many cases, we have made Islam and the Quran to be harder than it is. And I think sometimes we brag on the fact that this is a hard language or a hard vocabulary. When we use, for example, the language of fiqh and the mustalahat, the different conventions, some people seem to brag about it. And the fact that it is so complicated, and there are like 50 different opinions for this or that. The Quran is not like that. It's the opposite. It is actually a good sign. It is actually good, the fact that something is clear. So we should brag and we should be happy with clarity, not obscurity. And this is again, like I said, a clear attribute of the Quran, the fact that it is bayinat. Same thing you hear or you see in Surah Al-Baqarah when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Ramadan and Quran. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. So again we see the word bayinat because of the clarity. So this is important because here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not say that the Quran exists in the mushaf, the physical copies of the Quran that we carry. Rather, he said the Quran exists in the hearts of people, certain people at least, the people of knowledge. And this has two meanings. One is basically the people who memorize the Quran. So no doubt the Quran exists in the memory of the people who memorize it. And this is actually a unique aspect of the Quran, because this did not happen to other scriptures, not to any large extent anyways. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ highlighted this fact in several hadith. For example, in one hadith it says, describing the Prophet, وَمُنَزِّلًا عَلَيْهِ كِتَابًا لَا يَغْسِلُهُ الْمَاءُ. So he said, I will reveal to this Prophet Muhammad, a book that is not washed by water. What does that mean? A book that is not washed by water. Here it means that even if we were to come and wash the copy of the Quran, wash the ink away, so if the ink disappeared from the Quran, it will not be washed from the hearts, from the memories of the people who memorize it. This indicates the fact that many people of this ummah will memorize the Quran. So even if we were to wash the letters of the Mus'haf, it will not affect the Quran and its survivability. The fact that it will remain, it will not be modified or altered. There's also another hadith, similar one, that says that لو وضع في إهاب ما أحرقته النار. If the Quran was to be placed in like a skin or something like that, combustible, maybe like paper, it will not be burnt by fire. And I think this is really interesting, this hadith, because we know in modern times we had several incidents where some people who had hatred toward the Quran attempted to burn the Quran. But I don't know if how many Muslims know this hadith. It's a direct response to these people. It says, go ahead and burn it. It's not going to affect the Quran either. So even if you put the Quran in something combustible and you try and burn it, he said, ما أحرقته النار. It won't burn it, in the sense that it will not burn the Quran itself, because the Quran is alive in the hearts of people. So I think that's really interesting. In fact, there's also some statements by scholars, in fact some quotes by scholars, saying that in the older scriptures there is some description of people who come later, meaning the Muslims, the Ummah of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And in that description there is this word أناجيلهم القرآن أو أناجيلهم في صدورهم. So one of the descriptions of these people who come later, meaning the followers of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, is that their gospels, and it says the word anajil, the plural of Injil, which is gospel, says their gospels are in their hearts. So meaning that they're going to memorize their scripture. And here gospel means the Quran, right? So that's also very interesting. This is an attribute, it's a unique attribute of the ummah, of our ummah, the ummah of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So that is one meaning. It means that the heart, rather the Quran lives in the hearts of the people of knowledge, meaning those who memorize it. And that indicates also that the people who memorize the Quran are considered people of knowledge. The other meaning is that also the meanings of the Quran live in the hearts of the people of knowledge. So even if you don't memorize the Quran, but you know some of the meanings of the Quran, any meaning you acquire, any contemplation you make will make you closer to people of knowledge. And this is also very, very important. The fact that we don't just recite the Quran, but it has an effect on our heart, and that it reaches our heart. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that أخوف ما أخاف على أمتي كل منافق عليم اللسان. He said that the fear, or the thing I fear for you the most, is the hypocrite whose knowledge is on his tongue. So now we have two categories of people, the people who have knowledge on their tongue and the people who have knowledge in their hearts. And the hypocrite, by definition, is the one whose knowledge is limited, it is restricted to his tongue. يعني علمه في لسانه وليس علمه في قلبه. That is the separation. And this actually occurs in several narrations. For example, when the Prophet ﷺ described the Khawarij, we know the Khawarij were the first deviant sect in Islam who declared people kafir based on major sins, based on committing major sins. That was the first deviant group. And one of the descriptions of the Prophet of that group is that يقرؤون القرآن. Those people recite the Quran, and they recite it rather abundantly. Wallahi, this is something we have to stop at and ponder upon, because it's not the amount of recitation. I mean, nowadays we may have so many different recitations, beautiful voices and all of that, but the Prophet said here, alayhi salatu wasalam, you cannot beat them in recitation. These people, I mean, when Ibn Abbas went to visit them in their camps, he said, all I can hear is that humming, like the humming of bees. Everybody participating in recitations of the Quran all night. But the Prophet described them and he said, لا يجاوز حناجرهم. That recitation again will remain on the tongue. It will not cross their throats, meaning it will not go to their hearts. It's only a mere recitation on the tongue, but it does not affect their hearts, and it does not have any impact, any effect on their lives. And that really drives me to the last point, which is really important. When we say that the recitation penetrates to the inside, it really means, as we say in modern language, we internalize something. Like you might know something for a while, you might memorize it, but then finally you internalize it. It becomes a part of you, not just by implementation, but also by reflection. It becomes part of your thinking. It becomes part of who you are. And this is why we find some descriptions of certain scholars, when they talk about them, they say, اختلط علمه بلحمه ودمه. His knowledge was so true, so sincere, so genuine, it became part of his flesh and blood. Like you can't separate them anymore. They're the same, one and the same. Knowledge, this is how much they absorbed that knowledge. So it's no longer superficial on the tongue. You can just mimic somebody or say it and you know, out of memory, like rote memory, and you're able to pronounce it correctly, because that's what we focus on so much. Rather, now it has become one. Knowledge and the self has become one. And that's the ultimate goal. And I think that's, you know, one of the meanings of this beautiful verse. بل هو آيات بينات في صدور الذين أوتوا العلم. Rather, it is this Quran, it is clear signs in the hearts, in the insides, in the chests of the people of knowledge. I'll finish with one hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, again to highlight this point that real knowledge is the knowledge of wahi, of revelation. All the other knowledge, whatever it is, religious knowledge, whether it is hadith, fiqh, seerah, tafsir, it all is like complementary knowledge in order to help us understand al-wahi, the revelation. That's the ultimate goal, to understand al-wahi. So here in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, ما من نبي إلا وقد أعطي ما مثله آمن عليه البشر. Every prophet was given enough signs, was given signs proportional to how many people believed in him. So again, remember, the number of people that follow a certain prophet is proportional to the number of miracles and signs. And we know, like Prophet Musa alayhi salam had certain signs, miracles, like the staff, the stick, the splitting of the sea. Isa alayhi salam had the miracles of curing and healing and so on. But then he said, وَإِنَّمَا كَانَ الَّذِي أُوتِيتُهُ وَحْيًا أَوْحَى اللَّهُ إِلَيْهِ. The Prophet said, and what I was given, the sign, the miracle I was given, was nothing but revelation. That is the main miracle of the Prophet ﷺ. So it wasn't a physical miracle that ended with the ending of that miracle. Or at most, it survived until the people who saw it died, right? He said, rather, my miracle will survive because it's made of revelation, and that revelation is preserved. So he said, وَحْيًا أَوْحَى اللَّهُ إِلَيْهِ. This is the kind of sign I was given. فأرجو أن أكون أكثرهم تابعا يوم القيامة. And my wish, and because of that, my wish is that I will have the most following on the Day of Judgment. Because as long as we have the revelation and we use it properly, we contemplate it, we think about it, we reflect upon it, we try and learn it and study it and use all the tools necessary, all the tools in our possession to understand it, and then of course to apply it and make it part of our lives, make it part of us, who we are, then inshallah we will be from the followers of the Prophet ﷺ. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you inshallah next time. Assalamu alaikum.